Gotham Knights feels like, if anything, in the year 2022, it's the game that there's a huge discrepancy between what the player experiences and what supposed critics and YouTubers and influencers review the game. And I remember seeing the reviews before the release, and they were complaining about a lot of the open world systems in Gotham Knights. So when I went through it, I found that it was not as bad as they made it out to be, but also I had the benefit of not having to rush through what seemingly are grinds, but if you take your time with it, even then, it still doesn't take you long to finish it. So the things they were saying is the knighthood challenges and whatnot, and frankly, if you really wanted to power through it and get it done as fast as possible, it might take you less than an hour, truthfully. And I've been wondering where this discrepancy was between how I felt and when I was playing and how reviewers felt. And there are certain reviews that seem to possibly over exaggerate how bad this game possibly is. But I found that it was enjoyable. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't great, but I appreciate it for what it was. And I think that's one of the big things. When I think about this game, which I've thought about for the past week to whenever this game came out, just how much of an opportunity it is, just a treat to play as one of the Bat family, one of Batman's allies, but not as Batman. Because the common silly comparison was they always compared it to Arkham, the Arkham games, which I always found that to be completely unwarranted and I think was uncalled for. This game is on its own. At the closest comparison you could probably come up with is the Assassin's Creed games, actually, because the gear system and the combat system actually reminds me of the more recent modern Assassin's Creed games after Origins. So I think if you had to compare the combat system, it would probably be to Assassin's Creed, in my opinion. And if I'm going to do that, I think this is more fun than the Assassin's Creed games, ever since they did their revamp. I don't think the gear system in Gotham Knights is too in depth, honestly. I appreciate doing it, like getting new gear and such, but I don't feel it's a focus, which may or may not be a good thing. But I don't feel very compelled to try to search for the very best items, the legendaries, the very hard to get gear. I was perfectly content with finishing the campaign, maxing out my level, getting all the skill points I can, and actually getting all the collectibles. Because the thing I appreciate with this game, maybe it's because I really enjoy DC lore and just the universe, and just seeing all the Easter eggs in this game made me very happy. Just seeing the connections to the bigger DC universe. But I feel like this game is going to be the closest we'll get to a Daredevil game uh because of how each character plays, and I feel especially with Nightwing or maybe even Robin, just zipping around and just beating thugs up, interrupting random crimes, which is such a treat because that's how you always envisioned it, right? It's just when you watch these movies or anything, you just wish you were a superhero, and you just interrupt like a drug bust or something, like it's just a drug deal going on, or just when you can actually be the superhero. and have that power fantasy, which I think is awesome with this game. And I got that fulfillment out of it, and that feeling is so good. And it's why I liked superheroes to begin with, like Marvel or DC. Have that power fantasy that I'm this individual that's super powered or just better trained, and I just kick their ass. Like whoever random thug is trying to mug some random citizen or anything like that. I think it's a wonderful game that got unfairly treated, I believe. I don't think it deserves all the hate that it got, and I think that there's a good amount of criticisms that are legitimate. This game is not perfect, like I said. The game performance has improved since launch, but it's still not great. I still get frame rate drops and hitches and occasional crashes now. The the traversal abilities are mixed to my opinion. They're not as good as the Arkham games if you wanted to compare it, but Batman could zip around with his cape and glide really fast, and nothing in this in Gotham Knights ever reaches that speed, unfortunately. So traversing across the city is not as fun as it could be. But like I said, interrupting random crimes is a blast. And I think this is a very solid game. It reminds me of Mad Max years ago, where critical eyes, like, from critics and publications and whatnot, didn't really like it or call it generic and such. Is like, in a way, but the main appeal of it is like car combat and upgrading your car and everything like that. And I that was the most fun part to me because there's very few games that actually do that, where you drive around an open world and the pretty much the focal point is your car. So, and the focal point of this is just being the superhero, being Nightwing, being Robin, being Batgirl, being friggin' Red Hood of all things too. There hasn't been a game that lets you do that besides maybe some Lego games, but that I wouldn't even call that fulfilling. Just if people wanted to actually play as a character in the DC universe. And like I said, there's all the Easter eggs that just make me happy. Just seeing emails from famous superheroes that everyone knows, like, you know, it's a treat. It's a treat. I think this game is a pretty good love letter to DC fans, if anything. There's a lot of flaws, but I think if you can look past it, there's a good amount to like about it. And I think that's the most important thing. And it's something that I realize, and when you listen to this, I think you should formulate your own opinion. But this is just my opinion that it's a good game. It's okay to look at reviews and such, but, you know, don't totally base your decision on another person's. Try it for yourself, see if you like it. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for me is I found the biggest discrepancy just listening to reviews, pre-release reviews about it. And as I've said, it's just I really don't agree with most of it. Or I think that it's most of the reviews were rushed out because a lot of the problems they say I don't find that issue with. And it might be, people might agree with that, and that's fine. But for me, I think they made a bigger deal of it than it should have. Like the quote unquote grindy parts of the game. And I think it's a huge detriment because they're on a timetable when they're releasing this before this game comes out, and they're trying to finish as much as they can before then. And I think it's a shame. And I hope in a few years' time, when people look back, come to this game later on, maybe they want to see how things iron out, performances and performance wise and everything like that, and patches to add more content. I hope people give it a fair shake and, judge for themselves that, hey, maybe they actually will like this game.